Alright guys, y'all come with us on our canning journey today. So today we're going to do an in-depth canning video. I don't know if I'll actually can anything or not, but we're going to talk about canning today. You're not going to see a lot of my face as usual. You're going to see a bunch of stuff. And as y'all can see, I've got a counter full of stuff. Okay? So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start talking about the different canners and a water bath canner. So let me move some stuff. Alright, the first thing we're going to talk about today is a water bath canner. This is a water bath canner. Essentially, it's a pot with a lid. Now, what do I water bath can? You can do pints or quarts, anything that fits inside here that covers up the liquid. Covers up the jar top with liquid. You can can jams, jellies, anything with acid, so pickles, salsas. I can my tomatoes in the water bath canner. Now, if you want to be a rebel canner, you can can a lot of things in the water bath canner, but it takes forever to water bath can like meat and stuff. So you can pressure can green beans, for instance, for 25 minutes. If you water bath can green beans, that's going to be a 3-hour job. So choose wisely with your resources. I understand people are afraid of the pressure canners, but it's worth it in the long run if you have access to a pressure canner. Don't be afraid of it. I am 48 years old. I have never seen a pressure canner explode. I am not going to do the water bath of things that should be pressure canned, except tomatoes. Tomatoes can go either way because they are not a low acid food to start with. When you when you water bath, make sure you cover those jars entirely with water. That is the point of it. So canning, you bring all the stuff up inside it to a certain temperature for a certain amount of time, and what it does is it kills the bacteria and stuff on the inside to help you preserve that food for longer. You're essentially cooking it and overcooking it with a purpose. That's what I like to think of it as. So this is a small water bath canner. It will only hold 4 quarts at a time. I think it'll hold like 5 or 6 pints, but it is a small one. But it's what we got and it's what we use. So I just make a lot of batches in my small water bath canner. One day I'll get a big one, but this is what I have. All right, let's move on to the next one. For this one, we're bringing out the pressure canners. Now, I'm not going to bring out all the pressure canners, but I am bringing out 2 for a reason. All right, pressure canners. Essentially, we have 2 different styles. We have what's called a weighted gauge and a pressure dial gauge. So this canner has a weighted gauge. What does that mean? Let me show you. This is a weighted gauge. Now, I don't know if you can see on here or not, but it's got numbers. So this is 10, this is 15, and this is 5. So you put this over this to determine your pressure. And it will hold it at that amount of pressure. Okay? Now this one, excess escapes out somehow. I don't know how. I've not used this one. This one belongs to Mark's mom. But this is a weighted gauge. Okay? Now I have another style of weighted gauge. I'm not exactly sure how it works, but we just bought a new canner and it came with the weighted gauge and the pressure dial. So this is the jiggler. It's a weighted gauge. And it has these little pieces that go on here and work somehow. So I prefer my dial. I do. I prefer the dial. But this is also a weighted jiggler. So this would go on here where this part is. Alright, so this pressure canner has a weighted gauge. The lid has a seal on the inside. Okay, now the old school, you had to keep this ring oiled. I don't. My husband does occasionally, so I don't worry about it. And then it also has this plate in the bottom of it. This keeps your jars off the very bottom of your pressure canner. It also has a thing that closes off the lid to all the steam escaping, basically. If this does not work, you will not seal your lid totally, because all of it will be escaping around this. So this is something that has to be tested occasionally to make sure there's no leaks. Otherwise, you will not be holding it at the amount of pressure that it needs to be for the amount of time, because it won't be holding the pressure correctly. Now, there's tricks to shutting these lids. There's a certain way you have to line them up. And it's different on every one of them, but similar. So this lid, as you can see, has notches in it. And so does the pot. The pot also has notches. So basically you start setting it off at an angle. I don't know if y'all can see that or not. And you find where it goes down. And it's usually going to be similar to that. Here's the one handle and here's the other handle. And then you twist them together. Well, most of the time. Of course, this one's not going to work. So let me try it again on the other side. There we go. This one's the opposite somehow. And I can't twist it with my wrist being broken and messed up. Anyway, so you'll twist it on and it'll seal and all that good stuff. There it goes. Got it. So when both handles align, your pot is closed properly. So I'm going to set this one down. This is the pot that we use the most. We just bought a bigger new one. Now you can tell this is a little bit bigger, but not much. So I could probably stack in this one where I can't as much with this one. So this is the one we're going to talk about. This is a dial pressure canner. This, as the pressure builds, rises up. You've seen it in my videos where I talk about the pressure building up. So it's got a seal right here that pops up when it's ready to seal off, and the water is boiling, and the steam inside the pot is building. So that will pop up and it'll seal it off. Now this also has the check valve type thing. If this ever blows out, it prevents your pot from blowing up, basically. But if it ever blows out, then you've got to get this part replaced. It's a safety check feature. So what you do, when this comes up, then you put this gauge on, or this weighted jiggler thingy. Okay? So pressure dial. And when it goes up to the pressure for your area, then you're ready to go. Lid goes on the same, offset. This one actually is marked on the lid. There's words right here that says open and close with a little arrow, and it even shows on the the handle here, a little line for center that you're supposed to line it up to close it. And then same thing as before, just twist it to the handles align. Alright guys, this pot is the same as the other one. It's got the little piece on the inside that your jars sit on top of. So there you go. There's a quick lesson in pressure canning. Alright, so again, when you have a pressure canner, you need to have that gauge, the pressure dial gauge tested. Your local extension service offers that service at no charge. You just bring them the lid and they check to make sure that the dial is accurate. So do that. That is important because if it's not actually accurate, then you're not canning your food properly. So keep that in mind. And it could be higher than what it says, which could cause your thing to blow up if it's higher than what it's reading. But if it's lower than your reading, then you could be getting botulism and stuff like that later on down the road because your food didn't actually pressure for the amount of time it was supposed to prevent that from growing and to kill that out. So keep that in mind. Everything we do, we kind of go off food safety with the USDA. I am a rebel canner though. I do not do everything by this book. So do keep that in mind when you watch my channel, and I'll try to make sure I tell you. There are Facebook groups for rebel canners as well, and sometimes a Facebook group for canners in your area. There's lots of YouTube videos that you can follow. Just make sure that you are willing to take the risk if you do something that is not by the book, okay? We did oven can our flour the other day, despite the fact that it's got plastic lids. The lids don't go in the oven to start with, so what we did, we took saran wrap and put that down over the top of the jar and then put the lid on top of it and then taped it up to where nothing could get in there essentially. So our flour is now in jars. But, y'all, I'm silly. I should have took the flour from the freezer and put it in Ziploc bags with an O2 absorber and put them down in 5-gallon buckets. That would have been so much easier because the freezer kills anything in your flour just as well as the oven does, and my brain just went on vacation that day. So anyway, yeah, your area has a specific value for how much pressure you need for your canner. Our area is 11 pounds of pressure, or 10 if it's a weighted gauge. So do keep that in mind. You need to find out what your pressure is for your area. Your pressure will remain the same no matter what you can. So we are going to get started. Now, my canner that I always use came with a book. And it's actually not the right book, but it's kind of standard. I think this is the one for his mom's canner instead of the big one that I use all the time, because his mom's is a Miro and the other one is Presto. So we're not very big on brand names here, so you're not going to hear, that I have the All-American canner and that's the only one that I use, because it's not. I just use what I have. And that's the thing that you need to learn as well. It's not always about the brand names. Your brand names can fail just like the rest of them. So if you go into it with the expectation that nothing's going to fail, then you may have a problem later. If you just base it off of brand. So anyway, your canner comes with a book. So inside this book are recommendations on also different things that you can, but it also is a recommendation on how to use your canner. So keep that in mind, that you want to refer back to this book every so often. For instance, when you can, you need water in the bottom of your canner. And this book will tell you how much water to put in the bottom. And that's what I'm actually looking for right now. All right, there it is. So let me come around here and show. All right, so right up there at the top is the amounts of water to put in the canner, depending on which canner you have. So mine is a 7-quart canner, even though it only holds 5. So, let's see. Pint capacity, quart capacity. Mine holds 10 pints, so 7 quarts. There we go. Mine needs 2 quarts of water. So that's what you got to do. You've got to try to figure out how to read this chart that comes with your book, because it's kind of standard for all of them. Mine needs 2 quarts of water in the bottom of the pressure canner when I start canning. So that's what we're going to do, guys. We're going to put that in the bottom of our canner, and we are going to get started on canning some corn today. So y'all stay tuned as we go through all the steps. Alright, next installment of how do I can stuff. Let's talk about things you must have. One of the first things you must have is a towel, because wet jars can sit on here, hot jars can sit on here when you take them out of the canner. So always have a towel ready for when you're pulling jars out or when you're washing these jars. That way you can set them beside where you're actually working. Towel. Next up, the funnel. The funnel sits down in the top of this and makes that area for filling bigger. Okay, they make a wide mouth funnel as well. This is a regular mouth. All right, speaking of wide and regular mouth, what am I talking about? All right, so we have wide mouth jars and we have small mouth jars. Now, this is a small mouth jar. The lid is this size. This is the lid for a wide mouth jar. I can put my hand inside that jar to do what I need to do, okay? So I prefer wide mouth, but it's not the only thing I'm going to use. I will use what I have, like I've said before. Now, I'm going to set these aside, and we're going to talk about parts. These are called rings or lids, okay? Well, they're not lids. These are the rings or the caps or the whatever you want to call them. They go on the outside of the lid. This little flat, that's what I used to call them when I was growing up, flats, because they're just a little flat piece of metal. These are the lids, actually. And you want to check your seals. So this one is a used seal, but there's really nothing wrong with it. There's no nicks, no dents, no anything. Now this one is a used one, and I don't know if y'all can see that up at the top or not. We're all right through here where I tried to get that jar open before. I messed up the lid. Okay? I may try to reuse this one. I don't know. This is the lid that you're taking a chance with, though. So when I say I'm taking a chance, I don't know if it's going to seal properly. So this will be the first jar I use, and I will test my product from this jar most likely, because this one may or may not seal. This one probably won't seal because it's so dented up and misshapen, actually. So we may still use it, though. But that's why I'm saying you need to make sure when you pull your jars out that they seal, because you can't just trust that a ball lid is going to seal every time, because sometimes they don't, even brand new out of the box. I've heard a lot of failures lately about people with canning experience and all their jars failing, or half their jars failing to seal. That's very dangerous if you put that jar up and try to eat it later. So keep that in mind. These lids, per the USDA, are not meant to be reused, but you can reuse them as long as you go into it expecting to have some failures. Okay? So lids and rings. Regular, wide mouth. Alright, next up. You can buy those things. You can buy a pack of just lids, or you can buy a pack of rings with lids. Now, I have not opened this pack yet. This is a set of wide mouth, and guys, it tells you on the box that these are wide mouth, okay? But when I open this box up, I've got lids with rings, okay? I still need to wash them. Always wash before you can with them, just to make sure there's no germs that you didn't know about. Now, we don't have to do what we used to do, where we threw them in the pot of boiling water and used the magnet to pull it out of the water. Now, you just wash it with regular soap and water, and you're good to go. But you can buy the rings with the lids, or just a pack of lids. Alright guys, what else do we need? You need a timer. Now my oven has a timer, and that's what I use. But this was in somebody's canning kit that we purchased, and it... Oh, okay, there we go. It's got a clip on it. I was trying to figure out what that was. I apologize, guys. This is the timer that came in their canning their canning kit. So, you know, when stuff reaches boiling, or the pressure has reached its point where it needs to be, you've got to time it from that point to get it canned properly. So you need a timer. What else do we need? Well, you might need tongs, you know, to lift things out of water. You might need tongs to help you stuff the jars. Lots of reasons you might need a tong. Jar opener. Small opening down here and a big opening up here. You can open your canning jars with this. This will take the rings off, but not the lid. The lid, you've got to have some methods to get that lid off. Alright, next up, the jar lifter. Alright, this end is coated with rubber or silicone or something. This end is curved. This is the end that you lift your jar with. This goes around the neck of the jar. Okay, goes right there. Okay, this is your handles. Plastic handles, maybe wood. It may not have handles anymore, but this is your jar lifter. This is important. This is what you're going to pull your jars out of the water with. I mean, unless you want to wait till the next day when everything's finally cooled down enough to touch. This is important. Next up, whenever you're canning, you want to run something down on the inside of your jar, whether it's a regular knife or one of the tools that they make for it, to get the air bubbles out. This was designed for that, and it has the magnet on the end for lifting up the lids out of hot water if you still do that method. But you do not have to. This is made like a knife, as you can see, but it's just made out of plastic. So you run it down the inside of your jar and get the bubbles out. This does the same job, but this is a headspace tool. So this, as you can see, has notches up here, and it tells you how much headspace you have in your jar. So basically, you set it on the rim of your jar, just like that, and whatever that notch is tells you where your headspace is. Okay? Now, most of your recipes are a 1/2 inch to 1 inch of headspace. Okay? So, this notch here is 1 inch, 3/4, 1/2 inch, and 1/4. Alright? This thing also does the job of getting the bubbles out. That, guys, is most all of your tools. Now, I will say this. This is a tool as well. Canning and pickling salt. Why is this important? Well, it doesn't have to be Mrs. Wages. It can be any brand you want it to be. It can be sea salt even. Regular salt usually has something to keep the crystals separated. That clouds the water of what you're actually canning. So you want to get something that does not have the extra substance in there that will cloud the water. Sea salt doesn't usually have it. Canning salt does not have it. So take your choice. You can use what you want. Just check. You can use regular table salt. Just expect your product to have a little bit of cloudiness to it instead of being clear. Okay, so that is your basic canning tools. That is the main things that you need. When you're making pickles, they make pickling spices already together. They make a dill pack of seasoning that you just add to your vinegar. They even have a salsa mix now that you can purchase and use. You don't have to have the recipes as much anymore as you used to have. So we are going to start canning the corn now.